Okay, yes. So this video is about Grayson 16. If you know nothing about me, know that I am a huge James Bond fan and a huge Dick Grayson fan. So to have Grayson 16, which is basically, I feel, not a love letter to Ian Fleming's franchise, but, you know, a way of looking at the characters in Grayson and showing how they do subvert a lot of the tropes in that spy genre. You know, it was really good. I loved it. I really did. Tom King was handling the script this month. You know, he's doing dual writing duties with Tim Seeley, who is awesome, and Mikel Janin was doing the art. He's great. Wow. And Jeromy Cox was on colors. Okay, so that's our typical team for now. With Grayson 16, you saw this really great tongue-in-cheek approach to Bond. You know, because that's who Dick Grayson in Grayson has been compared to the most. You know, despite the fact that there are other spies, you know, the most iconic fictional spy is James Bond. And that comes with a lot because James Bond, I constantly say this, he is a male fantasy figure. And, you know, that means that he tends to be misogynistic, the media tends to be racist. It's really one of my ultimate problematic faves because the male fantasy tends to be patriarchal in a lot of ways. And I think that what Tom King and Tim Seeley have done with writing Dick and writing the spy superhero mashup really comes across well in Grayson 16, you know, because we've been building up to this, you know, and a lot of things like how many spy movies last year were happy spy movies, you know, or fun ones. You know, you had Spy with Melissa McCarthy, you had Kingsman, which wasn't necessarily good. It may not have been. But, you know, most of the spy movies, though, that were like blockbusters, like Mission Impossible or Spectre, were pretty, you know, they were grimdark. You know, you had the overarching awful system, you know, trying to get our spies down. But they weren't necessarily fun, you know, and I don't think that many of the films that we got first for the spy genre subverted any of the classic tropes. You still had white dudes going to these different countries where people of color were in the backgrounds. You didn't have many characters of color or women in main roles, you know, and that's a little disappointing. Grayson gives us characters of color, you know, and it's gives us women in power. And I want to talk about the characters of color first because this is super important to me because you know, Helena Bertinelli is basically my favorite character, and she was a great character prior to the New 52 and the DCU mini reboot. But when I first saw the concept art for Helena, where she was not only black, but she had this head full of curls, and it was like, wow. Because we'd gotten Naomi Harris as Eve Moneypenny in Bond, in Spectre, and she was beautiful, you know. She was a powerful black spy, you know, a badass, given romantic and sexual chemistry with Bond that they then dropped the ball on, but whatever. And I wanted more of that. Helena Bertinelli is written in such a way where she is multifaceted. I talk about it a bit in my post about fandom and Grayson, but yeah, she's amazing. And we get that from our creative team. She gets to be in power, sensitive. You know, we don't see her, there's no sassy, strong black woman who doesn't need a man going on. She's just Helena. You know, it would be entirely plausible for us to see her in a relationship. within the context of this comic, because the narrative doesn't hypersexualize or desexualize her, you know. And then we have Tiger, my secret husband. I love him, and I really do like that Tiger we've definitely seen him evolve as a character. He is from Kandahar. He's a Muslim character that is not tied to stereotypes. He gets to be powerful, attractive, and not a holdover of toxic masculinity. Most of the characters in Grayson are not men who are overwhelmed with toxic masculinity, which is amazing, but I'll talk about that later. But yeah, like, I love that Grayson 16 shows us, you know, kind of like this team up, you know. And Dick is, by the way, he's supposed to be Roma. Still haven't seen too much of that, but, you know, I am not entirely qualified to speak about that, so, you know, I don't know what the future will bring in terms of the heritage started, I think, by, was it Chuck Dixon back in Nightwing, but I'm not sure with that. But, you know, I do think it would be nice to see more explicit references to Dick's heritage in Grayson. But, you know, so, okay, Grayson 16 it starts with, like, the typical Bond opening, you know, how we see James Bond, you know, doing something ridiculous or legal or both, and then someone, you know, the pre-credit, like, what the heck just happened moment. And you had Agent 7, I believe, who's bald, who looks nothing like any James Bond we've ever had, but the connection is obvious and hilarious. You know, he essentially tortures a dude for this password, Swordfish, Halle Berry, what? And then goes into this club where he proceeds to give all of these women, like, you know, the stereotypical James Bond names, you know, like how Honey Rider is code for missionary, or not missionary, lady on top sex. Like, so he gives these ladies these code, you know, like, hey, Mrs. Sheepsbottom, which is ridiculous, you know. And he walks up to the bar, and the bartender, who is, you know, Dick, is like, oh, well, do you want anything specific? Or whatever. And our Bond analog, our explicit Bond analog, is like, no, just surprise me. So of course Dick kicks his ass, you know. And I like that it's funny, you know, and that's a really good thing about this issue. It's hilarious. I think it feels for me that Grayson sometimes comes across as Tom King's lighter work. You know, technically I'm still reading Once Crowded Sky, and wow, you know, in terms of intensity, vision, you know, what was the book I'm reading? Sheriff of Babylon. You know, like, all of his other books are intensely psychological. They deal with really harder hitting issues, because, I mean, you know, international espionage is still a big thing. You know, but Grayson is, when he writes a Grayson book, it's like, yes, because it's so fun. Not that Tim Seeley isn't fun. I love him. I've been reading his work since Hack Slash, which, yes, that's how you do slashers. He revitalized my interest in horror movies as a teenager. But yeah, you know, and Tiger gets some of the best lines and the best faces. He's like just exasperated, and I love, like, when Dick gets into the car, Tiger's like, he just handed me the keys. I think he thought I was the help, and I was like, yes, that's a thing that happens. It felt just realistic. I liked that Dick had a song. It was so weird, but, you know, it worked. I do think that there's this preoccupation with making characters be super serious all the time. And for a character like Dick Grayson, who has spent 75 years moving from really funny to really serious, you know, I think we need more of the funny, the cute. And I do think that, you know, with Dick basically getting a montage across several pages, you know, gorgeously rendered, where he gets to talk about, he sings about why the word girls, is kind of misogynistic, when you're dude using it to talk about grown women. And I don't think I'm giving Grayson or its creative team too much credit because, this is a new comic. These are people who, while they're not new to comics, they're new to, like, this character in terms of writing him. I mean, yeah, we're, like, a year and a half in, but whatever. And I'm always pleasantly surprised by the fact that they don't go with the obvious directive. They don't go with the easy misogynistic jokes. And if that means giving a little bit too much credit, I'm in. I'm going to do it. Women of color. We've covered that I love Helena. In Grayson 16, Helena really gets to shine. She's been in a position of power as the head of Spiral for a couple of issues now. After Blondie was killed, after Minos was killed, she was slotted into the leadership position. I'm still, I have intense feelings about this. But, this issue, she really shows that she's on par with, the heads of Checkmate, or what put me in mind was Jenny Sparks in The Authority, in terms of powerful heroines, because she's in power, she's not, she take charge. We see her interacting with, I believe, the Syndicate, which is like the heads of the different organizations or major agents from around the world. Like Bronze Tiger shows up. Like, I haven't seen him since Arrow, the show. It's pretty interesting. And she comes to them going, "Two of my agents have gone rogue." And I really, really think that if Helena doesn't know what's going on under her nose in Spiral, it has to be because of Net. It has to be because of what I thought was going to be a coup, but obviously isn't. So I was really excited because Helena, even though she's currently not on the correct side, she's really getting a lot out in terms of she's holding her own. She has enough power to go to some of the deadliest people in the DC Universe's main Earth and ask them to work together with her to take down Tiger and Dick. And I think that's pretty cool because we don't really, okay, M in James Bond, when she was played by Judi Dench, yes, she was one of the most powerful women in the world, but you didn't see that. She was often kidnapped. I think we saw her shoot a gun, maybe in Skyfall, maybe. You didn't really get a sense of the most powerful woman in the world has power. You got a sense of she was kept away from the action, and Helena is not that kind of character. And I like that. I'm also still holding out for shipping, but I know that we're getting a new creative team soon, which I'm not worried about per se, because they're people, they're writers and artists I don't know that much about, but this is the first time that I've ever been super invested in a comic because of the creator team's work, and then I'm having it change. Normally I get into the comic after, I'm like, oh, I don't know anything, and then wham, creative team changes and I start buying the book. But with Grayson, I've been here from the beginning, and I really liked tracking the chart, the progression of the characters, interacting with the creative team on Twitter. They're a bunch of really great dudes, and I like that they've recreated characters that, I loved before, but now I identify with. Dick Grayson is charming. He's sensitive. He is attractive. I love that, we had the Daniel Craig Casino Royale kind of dudes walking out of the ocean in their Speedos moment. That was choice. I loved it. I absolutely read Grayson for the plot, but if I didn't, you couldn't blame me. because Mikel Janin's art is gorgeous. You know, I love that no character is flat. You know, everyone exists, and we're seeing them as layers, like the Shrek onion, and I like that. Grayson 16 was great. I need to catch up with the issues that came before, in terms of Robin War, but I'm holding out for some awesome person to pre-order the trade for me, because, you know. But right now, I'm really excited to see what the future brings. Grayson is a great comic. Grayson 16 kind of it played with the idea that Grayson as a comic was taking a lot from Bond, and showing that, no, if you took a lot of stuff from Bond, you'd have, like, ridiculousness. And I think it was very cool. I'd like to see more of this style, you know, this lighter thing, you know. And then we have the end of the issue, okay? The end of the issue where Dick and Tiger go to Maxwell Lord. Yeah. And I hate Maxwell Lord, but that was good. Alright, now hopefully this has all been recording and my battery didn't die.